now with members of Team Red and Team Blue, some good old-fashioned politics, the way you like it here at Sky News in prime time. Jason Falinski is the Liberal member for McKellar. He's locked down. On the other side of the water in the east is none other than Matt Thistlethwaite, who's of course the member for what's your? I'm sorry, I've completely forgotten your electorate there. I apologise, Matt.
Kingsford Smith.
There we go.
Kingsford Smith.
I apologise. Sorry, mate. I was trying to say could you and all the rest, and I'm running through my head. Sorry, mate. So, lads, let's talk about a couple of things. Anastasia Palaszczuk wants to pretend that hotel quarantine in Queensland is full. So full, how's this, that Queensland MPs cannot return to Queensland before being able to go back to Canberra. Okay, but even more importantly, people who are moving to Queensland won't be able to do their 2 weeks. Any of the compassionate reasons people have been able to get into this state, not allowed. Apparently it's absolutely full as a goog. Forgive me, but I don't believe her.
We are scrambling for hotels and this has got to stop. It's too much pressure, so we have to put a pause. It's putting our workers at risk and it's also putting our community at risk as well.
Jason, I'm sure they can produce every document they want. I don't believe them. And also, they claim that they're going to run an Olympic Games, but they can't book a couple of hundred extra rooms in Brisbane. Garbage.
So, Paul, mate, you should suspend your disbelief. I mean, she's doing the best she can.
She's keeping everyone safe.
This is a woman who won the Olympic Games against no one. She won it, though. It's just, I mean, it's the kingdom of Narnia up there, replete with talking magical animals, I suspect, and unicorns. The fact is that, you know, this is what she's reduced the great state of Queensland to, where they can only take 180 people a day. And, you know, if that's what Queenslanders want their state to be reduced to, I don't know any Queenslander that wants that. I mean, I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Matt, look, I'm sorry. It just beggars belief that, we can't, we're the state government. We can run a hospital, we can run the police force, we can run the education system, we can get the Olympic Games, but we can't book an extra 100 rooms for the next 2 weeks.
Well, she must be able to do something right, Paul, because she won the recent electorate with a thumping majority. So I think she's acting in the best interests of Queenslanders. And I think, the people of Queensland want her to do things like this. They want to be kept safe. At the moment, they're not in a lockdown situation. They can go to the footy on the weekend. They can go out for dinner with their friends. They can go to work. Their kids can go to school. And I think that the people of Queensland are quite happy with the way that their government is administering this, because they don't want an outbreak from hotel quarantine. And yet you simply can't put people into any sort of hotel. They've got to they've got to be at a set standard, make sure that they can control the virus and its contagiousness. But we need to make sure that that there are adequate facilities available, and I think that she's trying to do that. It's only a pause for 2 weeks. And then they'll start letting people back in. But I think it's ultimately trying to stop Delta breaking out from their hotel quarantine system, as it did here in New South Wales and other states, so they don't have to go into lockdown.
Yeah, but okay, let's just do a little comparison here, okay? I got these numbers today from New South Wales about their hotel quarantine system and how many people have gone through it since the start of the pandemic. It's 225,000 people. Now, I will not for a second let the New South Wales government off the hook about their decisions about the mask mandate and the lack of vaccination of that limo driver. Won't let them off the hook for a second. I won't let them off the hook for a second about balking when there was a chance to get even tighter control over what was happening in southwest Sydney. But Matt, isn't the truth that New South Wales, whether it's nice politics in other parts of the country, that's where the bulk of Australians returning home have come to, and they've been able to essentially have a system that has worked. Now, no one's not pretending, and I'm not living in a fantasy land, that you're not locked down, my family's not locked down, all of that at all. But we have to give credit where it's due here, is that in Queensland, they're just going to pretend 180 beds, bang, we're done. Victoria, we're not taking any more people, send them all to Sydney. Queensland won't pay the quarantine bill of New South Wales, but New South Wales has taken 220,000 people, and it has been a pretty effective system, hasn't it?
Sydney's a much bigger city than Brisbane, and you're right, most of the people do come into Sydney. If they're flying into Australia, they come into Kingsford Smith Airport, which is down the road. It's in my electorate. so I know how important it is. But I think that the Queensland government are taking a cautious approach. They don't want an outbreak of Delta from the hotel quarantine system, and that's where it came from in New South Wales. So I think they're trying to learn the lessons of New South Wales and play an ultra cautious approach based on the medical advice, of course, to try and stop an outbreak so that they can continue to have the freedoms that they've got. And I mean, I've got to say, thank God they are, because we probably wouldn't have the NRL still going around if Queensland was in lockdown as well. It'd be finished.
Yeah, well, there'd just be no crowds. Just like, again, remember, there's a curfew in Melbourne, but football games can be played in Melbourne football grounds after curfew. Anyway, I love Queensland. If I could have the blood transfusions, I'd be a Queenslander, but their government, it stinks. It really does. It's all politics, but that's the way it is. Now, Jason, you've had a bit to say about spending and how that needs to roll in the next little while. This, in part, is what the Federal Treasurer has had to say about the amount of spending that's been happening in the past couple of years and who it has helped either keep in a job or keep off the unemployment queues.
Is more debt more dangerous for those businesses who can't afford it, though?
Well, individual businesses will make their own decisions based on their own circumstances, but this loan scheme has already been very successful. But no doubt, this money will help with working capital. It will help businesses expand, maybe purchasing new machinery and equipment.
So what are your concerns about spending, Jason? Obviously, we know that we can't be spending at 20 and 21 levels forever, but we won't be in lockdowns and we won't be needing things like JobKeeper and the current income support schemes.
Yeah, so Paul, that's absolutely right. And look, at the moment where we have an economic chasm, we're kind of all out on the log, it's slippery, it's raining, the wind's blowing, it's probably not the time to talk about pulling away supports. The thing to do at the moment is to get to the other side of the chasm. But when we get there, let no one be under any doubt, if they weren't already, that we are going to have a poultice load of money to pay back. And the question that we need to be asking ourselves at that point is, do you shrink your way back to surplus or do you grow your way back to surplus? And I just want to be on the record as saying, I think the way to do it is you need to grow the economy back to surplus, not be looking at spending cuts, looking at how you can improve productivity, how you can improve the way that people go about their work. And there are enormous benefits to that, because the truth is that the working class in Australia, the men and women who work for a living in this country, haven't seen a substantive real wage increase ever since the Fair Work Act was introduced back in 2009. And they deserve that. So the best way for them to get that is by improving productivity. That requires structural reform. No, we don't want to be doing that now, but I think some of us, it is incumbent upon us to be thinking about what we need to be doing in 6 to 12 months' time, as you say, when we're on the other side of this pandemic.
Yeah, Matt, I mean, again, not talking about election commitments, but talking about where the country should be 12 months from now and about how we are coming back from the hit that we're currently going through now. What's your philosophy about that? Is it about growing the size of the tax base? Is it about growing the economy so it's not about introducing new taxes? Just personal philosophy here. I get it. There's party platforms and all the rest of it. But what's your take on things?
Yeah, I certainly agree that we need to grow the economy. It's appropriate for governments to support the economy during difficult times like a pandemic and a downturn like this. And the government has provided support through JobKeeper to support small businesses and jobs. There's been the health response as well, which has required spending. The problem the government has, Paul, is that they've baked in some additional spending over the next decade, and the revenue is reducing. So they don't have a way to pay for this increased spending that they've baked in. Now, I agree that we need to grow the economy. We certainly have a problem with labour productivity. For the first time since they've been keeping records in Australia, labour productivity has actually been falling. Wages haven't been growing. Households have been under pressure. What I disagree with Jason on is I don't think that this government has the wherewithal to make the necessary reform to ensure that we do grow the economy and that we do get out of the mess that we're in.
Jason, activist groups, of course, have decided that you're next on the list, of course, next door to the Zali, Steggall and Warringah, right? So they think they can Zali you, and that means that they give constant leaks to The Guardian, including of highly selective polling that claims that in Liberal heartland they care more about climate change than COVID. You live there, The Guardian doesn't. What's your thoughts?
Mate, I mean, you know, the drips of Twitter are back again. And the fact of the matter remains that even in their highly politicised polling done by a company owned by the ACTU and the CFMEU, they still couldn't produce a poll that showed that the people of the northern beaches, of the lower North Shore, and of the eastern suburbs in Sydney agree with their pre-prescribed views. And what you have here is, I think people are waking up to the fact that the so-called independents, and Paul, let me come back to that in a minute, have achieved nothing. I mean, Zali Steggall put this climate change bill up. It's not supported by any side of Parliament. It was basically a plan to have a plan by an agency that could veto decisions made by the elected Parliament of Australia, which is why she was at a virtual protest meeting in the middle of a lockdown, putting politics before people, and said, we don't have time for democracy when it comes to climate change.
Wow.
You know, that is really, I think that sort of stuff is what's leaking out, what people are beginning to hear more and more, and they don't like what they're hearing. And so you have this astroturfing going on, where you've got like this giant vampire squid, and its tentacles are sort of get up, voices of, vote him out, your vote matters, you know, your northern beaches. You know, even Zali Steggall's Twitter account has over 3,000 of her followers, according to a program that tests whether they're fake or not. Nearly 3,500 of her followers are fake. I mean, this whole movement is just astroturfed. And what Australia needs is we've got real challenges, and it needs real people with real ideas who are actually going to take these challenges seriously and not keep playing politics.
Gentlemen, one of the great rock and roll acts, of course, is Rolling Stones. Their drummer, Charlie Watts, has passed away today. So I wanted to ask you either what's your favourite Stones song, or if you went to a concert, or a favourite memory of his particular performance. Matt, you look like a Stones man.
Painted Black, Paul. Painted Black. That was the first Stones song that I fell in love with in high school days, and it was in the movie Full Metal Jacket, and I remember it quite vividly, falling in love with that song in the 1980s and being a fan ever after that. But Ballet Charlie Watts, isn't it a shame that we'll never see the original Stones again? I think it's a great shame.
Correct. And if you had Watts over other members of the band in the death pool, I think you would have been surprised that it went the way that it did, as opposed to Keith Richards. But of course,
Keith Richards, how he's alive.
he powers on. Jason, what's your favourite Stones song?
Well, Paul, I'm a backbencher in the Morrison government, so my favourite one is "You Can't Always Get What You Want." But Paul, I've heard that if you try sometime, you might just get what you need.
Well, I don't want any of you to read anything into this, but I reckon one of his better drumming performances, or amazing drumming performances, was "Let's Spend the Night Together." But anyway, lads, thank you very much. Do appreciate it. We'll talk to you all again in the next couple of weeks. All right, quick break.